Oh my gosh, what is up, friends? Y'all have no clue how happy I am to be behind this camera right now recording this video. Like, when I said the start of 2025 has been crazy, like 300 miles per hour every single day, it feels good to just kind of slow down and stabilize in the best way possible, though. Like, a lot of amazing things are happening. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alicia All, and my goal is to help 1,000 people break into tech. I feel like at this rate, I might need to increase that number to like 100,000 people. Really not even break into tech. My real goal is to help 1,000 people make over six figures. And there's a few avenues we could do that in, but tech, I think, is probably the most streamlined approach for the average person who's looking for a job. So today I want to talk about something that I have been getting a lot of questions about on Instagram. First of all, pause this video, go follow me on all platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads. I've got the link in the description, or maybe I'll put my @ name right here. It is at Alicia All across most platforms. But yeah, I get this question a lot on my DMs. You know, a lot of people, especially with the job market right now, are trying to land their first role and they're struggling. And in order for me to give the best advice, I thought, let me just make a video that helps everybody based on where they are in their journey, right? So this will be for roles specifically in tech. Some of the information will probably apply no matter what industry you're in, but I got some goodies in the description to resources that'll help you in your process, right? So when we think about trying to land a job for the first time, or even if you're trying to scale up into a new position and level up and get more pay, you have to understand that the interview process is brutal. It is a long road. In tech, most of the times you're doing like at a minimum 2-round interviews. Sometimes you could have 4 to 6 rounds of interviews that you have to go through. So you have to be strategic and you have to pace yourself and you have to know what works best for you, right? So let's start off with the first piece of our journey, which is, do we have the credentials? Are we telling the proper story? Do we have the proper things in place to even be qualified for the position that we're seeking? Now, I don't mean that you need to be a master. There are a lot of people who hold themselves back from applying and getting out there because they don't feel like they're qualified. I'm just saying, like, do you have some relevant projects if you don't have previous work experience? Have you studied and got some certifications, right? Because what's even worse than never getting an opportunity is getting it and not being prepared to fully execute for it. So use this time before you get the ball rolling to say, like, okay, this is the position that I'm interested in. You know, these are the companies that I'm interested in. I've networked with the right people and I'm ready to go attack my game plan of applying everywhere, right? And so that could look like I said, certifications, completing a boot camp, you know, relevant projects, going out there on the internet and finding some free projects that you could do that showcases your skill set, going and, you know, volunteering to work as a contractor on 3 to 6 months engagements just to build up a portfolio. And so once you've structured all of that stuff up and the skills are in place, really the way you convey that to somebody is through a resume, right? And so the way that you'll know immediately if your resume is not working is if you are consistently applying to jobs and you are not hearing from HR or hearing from recruiters, right? So I like to think of this thing as a numbers game personally. I know that if I increase my exposure, if I increase the amount of eyes on my resume, then that's going to increase my odds of someone connecting back to me. Now, it doesn't always have to be your dream company, but I think it is worth going through the reps of the interview process because it'll help you knock off the dust. It'll help you start to figure out what questions are coming and how to properly prepare for those, right? So there's 2 ways to apply. Some people take the intentional route where they network with people on LinkedIn. They set up coffee chats. They try to find hiring managers and recruiters. They go to conferences. They basically are making connections in person or virtually in real time with the people in hopes that they have a position that aligns with their skill set. Now, that personally isn't something that has ever worked for me, so I won't speak on that. But I know there is a ton of value in the connections in the tech space. And I can drop some templates that I have used to get coffee chats from people. But I am personally more into something that I can be in control over, which is massively applying to positions. So if you could set out a goal to say, okay, every day, once I have my resume standardized, I've went on websites and confirmed that like it matches ATS. I'm going to just massively apply to 50 positions a day within that round, right? And the reason why I want to do this, especially initially, is because I just want to see, is my resume even a hit? If I can apply to 50 positions every single day, especially when you first start out, at the end of that first week, so basically like in week 2, right? Week 1, you apply to 50 a day. 50 times 5 is 250 applications. There is a rule of 10% that applies in everything in life. Like 10% of the people are going to do the work, 10% of the people are going to show up, right? Probably in applying, it's probably like 1%. So on week 2, what I would do is I would personally say, okay, week 2 and week 3, I should be expecting at least, at a minimum, 3 to 5 recruiters to be contacting me to do a phone screen. If I've done 50 applications a day for 3 weeks and I am not getting screened at least like 5 times, I'm going to start to wonder, is my resume up to par? And if that is not the case, then you might have to put in the due diligence to go back to a professional resume writer and have them frame your resume in a way to where it can actually start to attract the attentions of recruiters. A lot of recruiters use different things. Some people manually scan these resumes. Some people put them in software and look for keywords. And so I know the process of getting a job can be expensive, paying for certifications, paying for boot camps, and then trying to pay for a resume. But sometimes you're buying back your time. If you're not in the position where you can pay for a resume, I do have something linked below that I have used, CV.enhance. I feel like it has great resumes, and it also has a ATS tracker, so that way you could put in a job description and put in your resume and see if it's a match. Now, the one caveat I will say to the mass fire and spray resume process is that if you run across a position at a company that you really want, then I would take the time to personally go and customize my resume for that position. But 9 times out of 10, especially in some of these like technical roles, a lot of the skill sets remain the same, right? Like if you are interested in being a DevOps engineer, you're going to want to make sure you have CI/CD in there. You're going to want to make sure that you have, some type of scripting language that you're familiar with, those types of things. And the technology stack remains the same. Like if you know Azure, then that's going to be the same across the board, right? There's like just a baseline things that people are looking for. And the way that I would approach like how I apply for positions is that I would try to use my industry knowledge as an advantage for my lack of technical knowledge if you are trying to break into tech. So what do I mean by that? I was on the phone with a friend the other day who's they just completed a software development boot camp and they're trying to break into tech. I have experience in the trucking business. Like when we were previously both running our trucks, we would like share loads, share drivers, whatever, look out for each other in the trucking space. And so I said like your easiest way in, or something that would give you an advantage, is applying for some of the trucking companies that, we've interacted with. Like, there's a load board. It's basically where you could say like, okay, hey, I want to take this shipment from point A to point B. That's what a load board is. And so the company was called Truck Stop. I'm like, they have a whole like website. Anything that has like technology has a software developer somewhere. So I'm like, you could go on their careers website and see if they have anything for software development. Because what's going to set you apart from the other developers is you actually understand the end user. You actually understand the customer. You actually understand all of this business terminology. Like if I even said the word load board to you, some of you guys were probably like, what the heck is that? Or if I say something like, a reefer, like that means like a refrigerated truck, a truck that needs to be able to cool down the goods inside, right? That's just like trucking slang or terminology that like you wouldn't understand, but like he does. So him coming into that business gives him an upper advantage. So think about the industry that you're in and think about what companies are using technology, whether it's a website, whether it's an app, whether it's, any of those things. And you can go and apply your technical expertise to it as like an easy first step in. And then once you get your foot in the door and you get the technical experience, then you can switch to another industry that you're interested in. Like everyone's going to have their own journey and you have to embrace that, right? Some people are going to come in and they're going to get their dream offer at their dream company at the first shot. And that's just how things were supposed to work out for them. Other people are going to have to like go from company to company to possibly get to the end goal of where it is that you're really interested and going. And that is one thing I will take a break and say on the, picking a company that you work for. I would say the most important thing is that, first of all, you have to understand, why do I really want to work at this company outside of it sounds cool? Like, everyone wants to work at Google, Apple, Meta, Netflix, AWS, Microsoft, all these big companies that we hear about. But it's like, what do you actually like about that company other than like it's a big company, everyone knows what it is? Do you like their culture? Are they good people? Are there things that align with their core values? Are they working on projects that you're actively passionate about, right? Like, it's way more deeper than the money and just getting into tech to look cool. But anyways, yeah, that's my spiel. Make sure you know why you want to work where you're working. But for those of you who are just willing to work anywhere to get your foot in the door, do not walk into a situation that's going to make you more miserable than where you are now. So it's okay to understand, like, what is the company culture? What are the expectations? Like, what is the work-life balance like? Like, don't ask that question specifically what the work-life balance is like, but just have your ears and eyes open for like what type of manager, you have when they're asking questions. What are their expectations? Because you don't want to walk into something that makes you more miserable than where you left. And trust me, just because people are making a lot of money in tech, things do get old. Like, you might enjoy it for the first 3 months because you're making so much money, but eventually you just get used to how much money you're making and you'll be miserable again. So have some discernment also with like who you interview with and where you go. Like, just as much as you need to land this next role, they also need you. So you have a say-so in like how things go. But anyways, let's move on. So, okay, cool. We graduate out of the resume stage, right? Alicia, my resume isn't the problem. I'm putting feelers out there and I am getting phone screens, right? Boom, you are in a great spot because now you can move to our third phase of the process, right? Which is now we're in a position where we can start to say, okay, how am I showing up in these phone screenings? This is, for those of you who might not know what a phone screen is, usually your initial contact with someone from a company is HR is reaching out to you, a recruiter is reaching out to you, and they're just trying to get a feel for like, okay, well, let's walk through your resume. Let's address some of the questions that I may have, and let me make sure that you're actually a great fit for this role. And this is a very critical phone call because if you have things that are not listed on your resume, you can then speak to it, and you can also get some of your questions answered about the company, right? And so the best way to prepare for a phone screen is first and foremost knowing your resume like the back of your hand. Some recruiters are going to ask, some recruiters are more technical and they might ask about your experience or ask about, your knowledge of certain services. Most of the times, in my experience, it has been more of a high level conversation of projects you worked over. As a product manager, a lot of the concerns were, can you work as an individual PM versus being in a larger team of PMs where you're just supporting maybe one facet or one pillar of your product or service, right? And so the best way to prepare for that, like I said, is to have all of your projects, have all of your like bullet points on your resume, have a story to it, be able to effectively speak to them, and also doing research on the company and the position, right? You want to make sure that like HR wants to put eager participants in front of their hiring managers. So there are some small things like making sure you're in a quiet room, making sure that, if it's virtual, you do have a professional kind of setting or a professional appearance to yourself. This is essentially where you need to build up the confidence that like this recruiter is going to vouch for you, that you are qualified to do this to the hiring manager. They want to make sure that you do not mess it up, right? And so that is the first initial kickoff. If you're having a lot of phone screens, but you aren't moving to the next round, or you aren't getting put in the interview loop, you probably want to start to have conversations about like, how is that phone screen going? Because no recruiter is going to get off the phone and be like, okay, well, we're not moving forward with you, right? They're going to push the responsibility on the hiring manager. They typically say, like, okay, well, I'm going to give your resume to the hiring manager. If you're selected from that, then we'll interview you. That's like give or take. Sometimes they do give your resume to the hiring manager and they're only picking the best like 3 or 5 to interview. So if you're not in that rung, then you won't get interviewed. But other times it's just like, you really bombed this phone screen, so we're going to move on with somebody else, right? But another thing that you want to make sure that you've researched with the company and the culture and understanding some of those things, You also want to make sure that you have a pay in mind, because 9 times out of 10, they also want to make sure that you financially fit in the band before they waste everyone's time interviewing you. Meaning, like, if the band that they have for this position is 80 to 120K, but you're interested in 50K, then they might snuff you because it's like, we can't even get close to 150. Or they might be able to convince you and throw other things like stock and equity and blah, 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 sign-on bonuses or benefits to make up for the gap that you have. And so the best way to handle that whenever a recruiter asks, like, what salary range are you looking to be in? The best way to handle that is to actually push it back on them and have them remind you what the band is for this role. And the reason why you want to do that is because sometimes you can sell yourself short. Sometimes you could be applying for a position where the band is 150 to 190 and you come in at 140 and they're like, great, we'll take that because we're saving the company $10,000 less than like the lowest band in the position, right? So, you always want to ask like, what is the band what is the pay gap or what is the pay range that you have available for this position? And 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you. If not, we live in the day and the age of the internet. For most big companies, you can go on Google search what people are making on average based on years of experience and location. And that should help you get a ballpark picture of where you want to be. But also don't harp too much on this salary part. There is a negotiation part that happens after you get an offer. So just because you say where you want to be doesn't mean that's what you have to stick to. But if you go too low, you do have to do a lot of work to get the number higher when it goes to the negotiation part of it. Because they'll be like, why'd you go from saying you wanted 140 to now saying you want 190? What in this interview process justifies you increasing your base salary by $50,000, right? So cool. Anyways, boom. HR screen, lock that up, checking that off. If you're not doing well in your HR screens, that means you really need to understand your resume. You really need to start researching these companies and the cultures. And you really need to understand, based on the job description, what are they looking for and how can you be that perfect fit? Some companies are looking for like independent thinkers who can move the needle forward and just get in there and be a shark. Other companies are looking for people who can just like kind of shut up and listen and follow the leadership. And so you don't want to be the wrong thing to the wrong person, right? Unless you are who you are and you're looking for a company to fit what you are looking for, you're being picky, which is totally fine too. But cool. After the HR screen, like I said, typically that's when they refer you to the hiring manager. And this is where the hiring manager sometimes will reach out and have their own interview before they throw you in a loop. Or you'll just be set up with a loop with the hiring manager typically being your first touch point. This hiring manager is the person who has like typically the ultimate decision on if you get hired or not. And the loop is going to depend on the position, what it looks like. A lot of the times what they like to do is they have like a behavioral piece. They have somebody who's interviewing you just to see kind of like if you're a culture fit, if you have the right mindset, if you have like, basically, no one wants to work with a sore thumb, right? Like, do you pass the vibe check, bro? Essentially, right? Another phase could be like technical, depending on what position you're on. They could ask you to, whiteboard some code. They could ask you to go over, like a lot of the times if you just have a conversation with someone technical, you'll know if they know what they're talking about or not. But some type of technical leak coding, whiteboarding, scripting session. And then a lot of the other times, the two other interviews could either be people who you'll be working closely with, people who you'll be working closely for, like your manager's like counterpart equivalent, like maybe another manager of another division. It could be other peers on your team. Or it could possibly be a panel also, like especially in the PM position, because you interact with so many people, they will be quick to put you on an interview panel with the sales lead, the marketing lead, the VP of the company, and someone super technical, because like they want to make sure that as you interact with all of them, you know what the heck you're talking about and you're not going to steer this thing wrong. And so like if you're going through that process, the one thing that I would recommend is finding a balance between like still applying to positions, like how you dial back and apply, while like prepping and study. And I'll drop some links to some things below that that have helped me in my interview process, especially like as a PM. Shout out to Exponent. That's a company that I am not even sponsored by at all, but essentially it's a great platform because it helps you start to think about some of the interview questions that they could ask. Like a lot of these top tech companies like Google, Microsoft, that I've interviewed at, I won't tell you the exact interview questions that I got, but the style of the question was definitely not something that's testing your direct knowledge. It's showing like how you could think. Like they will ask you something crazy like, if you wanted to create a way to automate the way a car could cross the street, right? How would you go about building that out? Meaning, like, if you could move your car from this side of the street to that side of the street without having to drive it, what features would you put in place? And it's just like, bro, like I've never even thought about that. But it helps you start to think about like how you ask the right questions to gather requirements, right? Like, well, why do I want to move the car across the street? Do I have any disabilities, right? And a lot of this is like a made up scenario where you go back and forth, you gather requirements, you come up with some features of what you could do. Okay, we have this self-driving option from Tesla, boring. We have like, we could build a conveyor belt on the road, right? We could put valet in my building. There's all these ways to get the cars across the street. And like you start to talk about the trade-offs of each option. Well, like if we use the Tesla models, we'll have to pay, the company to outsource their data. If we have a valet driver, we had to be dependent on them being there 24 hours, right? You start to weigh up all the pros and cons. The goal is that like you're not talking about something that you know. The goal is to see how you think. And so anyway, shout out to Exponent because they did a great job of kind of framing those questions. And there are some free services where you could practice with your peers like 2 to 3 times a week, kind of getting those questions that'll throw you off guard and practice getting your interview reps up. I also have another connection for interviews. They do resume revamps as well. I'll link them below. He is an angel sent from above. I would just say that. Someone who's personally helped me double what I make in a year. And I say double. Double in a year. So, shameless plug on that. But it's worked for me. It's worked for a lot of other people I referred. So I definitely want to connect you guys with her. And she offers some mock interviews. But essentially after that, after you wrap up the interview loop, the next phase of that will be going into negotiating your offer, which I won't go into a lot in detail on this video, or honestly, I didn't go into detail a lot on any of this stuff. I'm really just talking at a high level, like how you could figure out where you're messing up and how to strategize. But if you want videos on a specific portion of this process, let me know and I'll kind of dive in deeper as to like what I did or what others have done to see success. But negotiating an offer. They want you because you're the baddest to walk on 2 feet. You are the best to ever do it. You are one of one. Timothy Turner is who you are. And they want you bad, right? And so they present an offer with you. They present an offer to you. Now, the best thing that I could say is always counter. I've never heard of someone losing a position because they threw out a counter offer. It's like they're going to do what works best for the company. They're going to try to get you in as low as possible without disrespecting you. Some companies will even disrespect you, but they're going to try to get you in as low as possible. So you always want to make sure you counter offer. And I will put some links to like a counter negotiation template on what are some things you could ask for. I've been able to help people get sign-on bonuses, relocation bonuses, just things that were not in the offer before, but because hey, don't ask, don't tell. You need to ask so they'll tell you. So you have to think about what's important to you and where you are right now and what you're trying to get out of this next step. I will say that for some people, base salary is all they focus on. I want to make the most amount of money yearly that I possibly can, which is cool. But there are some other factors that a lot of jobs offer, like relocation bonuses. If you have to move to another state, right? Can you give me some funds to do so? Even if you don't have to relocate. Throw it in there. Sign-on bonuses, right? Whenever you move from one company to another, sometimes you leave stocks and benefits behind. So they'll give you a sign-on bonus to kind of make up or compensate for some of those benefits that you're losing from leaving your existing company. And also because you're leaving, like being a knowledge expert in one spot to go to the next spot. But another thing is also like equity or stock. Some companies, especially the bigger companies like the FANG, the Googles, the Oracle, whatever, the big companies of the world, they offer stock in their company. So you can easily get, you know, let me not even put a number out there. You can easily get a lot of money in stock at some of these companies. And so you want to make sure that you're not selling yourself short there. There are some websites like levels.fyi and Glassdoor and things like that that list people's offers or what they got compensated. And I will link all of that below in the job offer. But the biggest thing is like you want to make sure you can articulate why you need that number, whether it's specific industry knowledge, whether it's specific, you know, technical knowledge, whether it is, you know, something at this company that you feel that you can bring that no other candidate obviously could bring because they chose you. Make sure you can articulate that well and just ask for it. What I have found is most companies either bump to exactly what you want, they'll meet you in the middle. It really just depends on how bad you want to hardball it. But I would say go back and forth maybe like 2 to 3 times, especially if you're desperate, and probably take that second offer. So they give you a first offer of 100K. You come back and say you want 140 because of blah, blah, blah. They bump you up to maybe like 120 with the $10,000 sign-on bonus in cash. So like all in, you're at 130. You can either take that or do one more bump. After that, I feel like, you know, you kind of are being like annoying. If you're somebody who's like, you're just looking for your next role because you want to scale up, then yeah, be as picky as possible. Go until you get exactly what you want. But for those of you who are trying to get your foot in the door, it's okay to like negotiate once or twice. After that, wrap it up, secure the bag. So yeah, I hope that helps with like the different phases of getting a job. It is tedious. Like I said, you're going to have to dial back a bit when you enter the loop because it does take a lot of time to prep for each interview. Another tidbit I would give you is to send individual thank you notes and follow-up emails after each interview. If you don't have the interviewees like direct contact information, at least share it out with the recruiter to share with them. There are like a lot of old school tips, I will say, that just kind of set you apart from the candidate pool and show like that you really are serious about this position and you want them. So if you guys want more sauce on any specific piece, let me know. I didn't want to keep this video too long, but hey, if you got some value, also like, comment, and subscribe. Like, we are getting a lot of views on these videos, and like only 10% of them are subscribing, right? The law of 10%, it follows you throughout everything. I don't know. I don't make this stuff up. I just live by it. So yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if any of this stuff has helped you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. And hopefully when you see me in the next video, you secured that position that you wanted.